Hey Froggy friends, Kirostyle here. Have you ever wanted to get into a fighting game, but you look up a guide and you're like, I don't understand what half of these terms are. They keep mentioning things that I do not understand or things that I don't really know. And where can I go get that information, right? Do I ask someone about it? Is there a place where I can collect all that information? Well, I have the answer to you. Well, not me personally. I did not make this, but it's something that I've kind of wanted to go over on stream one day because I think it'd be useful and educational, and not just for you, the viewer, but also for myself, because I've said before that I'm interested in getting better at fighting games. I am a big fighting game fan, but I don't spend time practicing them because most of the time I, switch up the game I play every couple weeks, and I don't really just stick to one game and play it for a long time. So I've never sat down and just gotten good at a fighting game, and I still kind of want to, but I just haven't found the time to do that. But maybe this will be a first good step, right? Because I've enjoyed fighting games for a very long time, and think that it'd be fun one day to sit down, pick one, and get good at it. So this is the Fighting Game Glossary by Infil, and this is created by a user named Infilament. That's their Twitter, although it looks like their Twitter hasn't been updated super recently, but they have their own blog and websites here, which you can find. You can search up the Fighting Game Glossary by Infil, or glossary.infil.net, and there's a plethora of information here on fighting games, and it is regularly updated as well. So big thank you to Infil and their team, their names listed here on the site, for putting this together, because I think it's a really good resource for people who want to get into fighting games, because it is a very daunting thing, right? Fighting games, even though they're different, there's a lot of transferable skills between them, terms that people use. There's a lot of overlap in the communities between different fighting games as well. A lot of fighting games are, mostly community driven. So having some kind of pre-knowledge or a place that you can come in and get all that information is, I think, very useful. So the Fighting Game Glossary, if we go to the stats page here, so there's a lot of information here. There's 1,010 terms in this glossary, 397 of which have a video or an image to go along with it, and 819 of them have Japanese translations, which is pretty cool that they're doing that as well, because a lot of fighting games originate in Japan as well. So they have also very nicely categorized their terms into different categories. So the first one here is just general terms. There's 506 general terms. These are just terms used across the board across different fighting games. But of course, there's also terms that are specific to fighting games, although a lot of specific ones will cross over to different ones. So of the 506 general terms, 92 of them have the star next to them for commonly used. So today, I think we're just going to go over the commonly used ones, because 92 is a lot more manageable than 506, and I do not plan to go over all of them. So there is overlap between the commonly used and the general terms. A lot of the commonly used ones are in the general term category. So if we go back through the general term category, you will see the 92 common terms as well. But of course, there's also one specific to certain games. So we have 104 terms here from Super Smash Bros. There's 69 from Street Fighter, 57 from Tekken, 42 from Guilty Gear, 31 from Mortal Kombat, 28 from Marvel vs. Capcom, 28 from BlazBlue as well, 27 from Melty Blood, 26 from Virtua Fighter, 24 from Killer Instinct, 24 from Soul Calibur, 23 from Under Night In-Birth, 22 from Dragon Ball Fighter Z, 20 from 2XKO, 20 from King of Fighters, 16 from Fatal Fury, 14 from Samurai Showdown, 13 from Other Games, and 9 from Injustice. And of course, those are not the only fighting game franchises around. There's plenty of other ones, but I think these are the ones that have kind of spawned a lot of their own terminology because of their fighting systems. But as you can see, there's a lot of fighting games to offer. I know some people that I know that may not be familiar with fighting games might think that it's just Street Fighter and Tekken and nothing else, and the other games might not have strong, thriving communities, but that's not true. There's strong, thriving communities for all these games, actually, which I think is very, very cool, especially for the games that haven't been recently released or haven't been updated in a while. It's cool to see the fans keeping it going, because, again, fighting games thrive and live and die based on their community. So this was just last updated in March 2026, so it is still regularly being updated. So that's pretty cool. If we go to the home page, well, the term of the day is mook, which is not the same type of mook I think of when I think of like a mook in like a JRPG or something like that. So again, we're going to filter by going to the commonly used section, which is 92 terms. We'll go over the commonly used ones today. And I don't really plan to do another stream where we go over other ones, but who knows? It might be useful to go through. So let's go through these, and like a lot of these I've heard before, right? And I know what they are, but it's kind of nice to refresh our memories and like go over them for people that may not know. And also just because sometimes these words have interesting origins, or they mean different things, or you might, you know, have a general idea of what it means, but maybe not be able to put it into like a definition in words. So let's go through some of these. And I love that they like link to other terms. They have like the Japanese word here. Some of them have pictures to go along with them. They will give examples, and they'll say like, oh, this is also known as other terms. Like, I think that's super cool. So 50-50 is a mix-up that has two possible primary options for the attacker, with each option requiring a different defensive action. Typically, this is used to describe difficult-to-block cross-up attacks, which force you to choose between blocking left or right, also known as a left-right mix-up, or mix-up between a good overhead and a low, which forces you to choose between blocking high or low, or a high-low mix-up. Even being directly in your opponent's face can be a mix-up between attacking and throwing. As you probably expected, this is often called a strike or throw mix-up. They're named this way because it can feel you only have a 50% chance of defending correctly. If you're struggling with these, you might check to see if any option selects exist in your favorite game that can help you deal with the basic 50-50, like fuzzy guarding or delayed throw teching. In Japanese, it's nitaku, literally means two choices. So I'm not going to click on like all the links to all the terms that each one goes out to, otherwise we'll be here forever, like fuzzy guarding or delayed throw teching, for example. But I think you can get the general idea. Now, I do know that fighting games, 50-50 is very important for balancing the fighting game and making sure that you have options for it, but also like not too many, because the idea is that like someone who is really good at the game, like a pro, should be able to beat someone who's like new at the game pretty reliably. But if a game is set up so a new person has a 50-50 chance of beating the pro regularly because of the way they do the mix-ups, that becomes a bit of a problem. I know that's been a bit of a problem in some games in balancing. Not going to mention them by name, and again, I'm not a guru on fighting games, so I can't guarantee that everything that comes out of my mouth will be 100% correct, but I think that's really interesting. Yeah, we're not talking about 50-50 in a gacha game. That's a different type of 50-50, but you get the idea, right? It's a 50% chance of something happening, right? Active, the period of time that a move has a hitbox and is capable of doing damage to the opponent. It's one of the three stages of an attack, along with startup and recovery, and is measured in frames. After your move undergoes some brief startup, the wind-up phase, then the active period starts, where your character's fist is finally able to connect with your friend's jaw. Then you have to suffer the recovery, or the cooldown phase, before you can move again. Despite the active frames being the only time a move can do damage, it makes up a surprisingly small percentage of a move's total duration. Usually moves only have around 1 to 4 active frames, even though the move itself might take 30 frames from start to finish. You don't have to focus on this number too much when you're learning how to read frame data, but you'll learn it's most useful for picking up a good meaty attack. In Japanese is jizoku, literally means continuous, and this one has a video. So here we have Jago from Killer Instinct, demonstrates the 3 phases of an attack: startup, active, and recovery. Attacks with lots of active frames can hit opponents who think they've avoided attack, like Tusk's standing HP, or they make excellent meaty attacks because there's so much opportunity for the attack frames to overlap the opponent as they wake up, or like Shin Hisako's third Rekka. As you can see, they're already throwing around all these other terms, right? And you're like, oh, I don't know what these mean. That's the purpose of this glossary, right? Because they're going to use terms that you've seen in other definitions. So here, startup, that's like the blue section, and then the red part is the active part, so that's where the move actually does damage if it connects to you, and then the yellow part is the recovery, which is like the animation that occurs after the attack, where no damage is dealt by the attack. So obviously, if you want to get good at a fighting game and know game in and out, like frame data is something that's really important, right? Air dash, using a dash while in the air. Some characters' air dashes can only dash in one direction, usually forward, while others can dash in up to all 8 directions. Air dashes are very common in anime games and the Versus series, but are quite uncommon in other fighting games. So when they say the Versus series, they mean like Marvel vs. Capcom and the such. When they exist, they greatly speed up the pace of the game and generally make playing defense pretty hard, especially if you do it instantly. Kuchu dashu, literally air dash. It's really interesting too, because if you know a lot of fighting games, you'll see like the different ways that they play. So even though on the surface, like 2 fighting games might look very similar, some of them play very differently. Like some of them are like you have to be a lot more defensive, right? Or some of them you prioritize having a good offense, which makes you better in the game. There's different ways that they are played, especially when you have like anime fighters, which often have a completely different set of tactics and a different set of like mechanics. Like Blaze Blue, for example, is a very technical anime fighting game that has a lot of things that you wouldn't find in like Tekken, for example. Assist, asking one of your off-screen characters in a team game to come on screen briefly and perform an action for you. Most team games will have dedicated buttons for calling your assists, and they'll usually perform some short attack and then leave the screen. In most team games, you can call an assist at any time as long as you aren't getting hit or blocking, and then they enter a short cooldown before they can be called again. Because you are free to do other things while your assist is acting, they are useful for all sorts of things, from extending your pressure to creating wildly ambiguous mix-ups to continuing a combo. Be careful though, your assists can get hit while they're on the screen, which can lead to incredibly rapid losses. In many modern team games, you can switch characters and start directly controlling your assist while they're on the screen. This system is usually called active tag, or in 2xKO's case, a handshake tag. Assisto, literally assist. Assists are used for many purposes, including locking down your opponent mid-screen, like Sentinel's drones in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, or Super Baby Assist in Dragon Ball FighterZ, or forcing brutal mix-ups in the corner, like Amateratsu's Cold Star, Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Some rare assists are even invincible at the start, making them great on defense, like Hager's Lariat from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And many assists are great for extending combos, like after UI Goku does a long solo combo in Dragon Ball FighterZ, he uses Android 21's assist to keep the combo going before ending in a level 3 super. I think games with assists they're fun, because obviously it means that you get to build your party and there's so many combinations beyond just picking one character to play as, but they're tough. Like, Marvel vs. Capcom is like, on the surface, it seems like a pretty easy game because there aren't that many buttons and stuff, but it is actually a really incredibly deep and difficult fighting game to learn from experience. So, but I think it's really cool. People that are really good at this kind of stuff, and then we have things like team building and stuff like that too. It's really fun to watch, I think, especially for someone who is more casual and doesn't really, engage in super high level play. Watching people do really cool things and being like, hey, I want to try replicating that is super cool. A backdash, inputting the back direction twice to dash backwards. In many modern fighting games, you are briefly invincible while backdashing, which can let you escape your opponent's pressure. But even if that's not the case, backdashing is often very useful to suddenly create a good amount of space between you and your opponent. If they attack at the right time, you can make attacks whiff and maybe even score a punish. Backstep, literally backstep. Enkidu from Under Night in Birth and Chip from Guilty Gear Strive demonstrate basic backdashes. Often you'll backdash for better positioning. For example, if Zeku from Street Fighter V blocks Rashid standing HK, he'll have to deal with offensive pressure. A well-timed backdash can make the attack miss, and then you can punish. In some games, your backdash might also be invincible for a bit, like Venom from Guilty Gear Xrd avoids a melee attack by backdashing. I like how when I read it out loud, I think the sentences I read seem to kind of match up exactly with when they're occurring in the video. Probably not completely intentional, but I think it's pretty cool. A bar, a small segment of supermeter, often called a stock. The entire supermeter is typically divided into several bars, which can be individually spent on actions such as EX moves. Gauge, literally gauge. That one's pretty straightforward. Block, the act of defending against incoming attacks. The attack makes contact with your body, but you take 0 damage from the attack, or small amount of chip damage in the case of special moves. While a few fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Soul Calibur require you to hold a designated button to block, most games like Street Fighter titles will block if you hold the direction away or both down and away from your opponent. When you block an attack, you are put in a block stun. Some attacks cannot be blocked, while other attacks such as lows and overheads must be blocked a certain way or else they will hit. Also note that guard can be used as a synonym for block, and you'll often see it used in names of system mechanics and techniques that have to do with blocking, like guard cancel. Blocking is a solid foundation of good defense, and you probably don't block enough. Gado, literally meaning guard. I personally prefer fighting games that have a dedicated block button, like Soul Calibur, because that's the first fighting game that I played. I know that it works when you hold the back button in other games, but I don't know, because usually most of the time I forget to block or I don't block enough. So having a dedicated button for it helps remind me, while like trying to like hold the back key, sometimes I'll be in the middle doing something else, so I actually can't block despite what it looks like. That's something I need to get better at, because a lot of, like it says here, a lot of more bigger franchises like Street Fighter, for example, you don't have a designated block button, and I need to get better at doing that. A block string, a series of multiple attacks that work well against a blocking opponent. Generally, a block string will be composed of several plus on block or cancelable attacks performed in quick sequence. When blocked, these will slowly push your character out of range and prevent the opponent from counterattacking, which makes them a very good default low-risk option when trying to apply pressure. Good block strings may even let you hit confirm into more damage if the opponent flinches and stops blocking. Some people think a block string might leave no gaps. That is to say, you'll be able to keep attacking your opponent trapped in a block stun with multiple attacks until you get pushed too far away. Not everyone uses the term this way though. Some people are okay with using the term even if there's small gaps between some attacks that might frame trap your opponent, as long as the gap isn't very big. Because of this, you might hear true block string used to refer to a block string that has no gaps to avoid confusion. Katame, literally to harden, or Renzoku Gado, continuous guard, or Renga, which is an abbreviation of another one, of Renzoku Gado. I love that they mention like exceptions where it's like, well, this is what the term means to us. This is how it might be used otherwise. So here's a more specific way if you want to be specific about it. I do appreciate that as well, because of course, this is not a universal dictionary. It's just like most common terms and to the interpretations of the people that put this together. Let's see a video. Leo from Guilty Gear Xrd and Sakura from Street Fighter 4 show some true block strings. Sakura demonstrates how you can often hit confirm a block string if you give yourself enough time to react. Jago from Killer Instinct shows a block string that is not true, that is, it contains some small gaps, but it's still common to use the term for strings like these. Block stun. The period of time when your character cannot perform any action after blocking an attack. Instead, you have to wait for your character to stop reeling from the blocked attack for a small window before getting control back. All moves cause varying amounts of block stun, and if consecutive attacks leave little or no gap there, called a block string, then sorry pal, you're just stuck blocking for a while. In some games, you're allowed to take a unique action during block stun. In Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, you can red parry. In Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you can press a button to push block and create distance. And in Killer Instinct, you can shadow counter. The duration of block stun, coupled with your opponent's recovery on their attack, determines a very important number in fighting games, the amount of advantage a blocked move will have. See, I'm surprised like certain words like advantage is covered under the like general terms, but it's not under the common terms. Because we've already gone past the A section of this part of the common terms. But that's okay, because again, I don't want to... My point of this video is not to go over every word with you guys, is to give you a taste, and then if you're interested, go and find out more of these things on your own by looking at Infil's glossary yourself. So, Gado Kochuku, literally guard stiffness. Goken from Street Fighter 4 shows a blocked standing HP, and the block stun is shown in slow motion. If you attack someone while they're still in block stun from a previous attack, that's called a block string. Sakura from Street Fighter 4. Block stun is usually short, but Mira from Killer Instinct shows how you can sometimes lock your opponent in block stun for a really long time. And again, like, I'm not gonna... I'll give commentary on the terms here and there, but I don't think I need to give commentary on everything, because otherwise we're gonna be here forever with 92 or whatever terms to go through. A common, or bread and butter, a common practical combo you use often in matches. It's almost always shortened to B&B. You'll probably learn an easy B&B for your character for situations that come up a lot, such as landing a jump attack or hitting with a crouching jab. It may be possible to do more advanced situational combos, but B&Bs are the dependable staples that every player should know and will put you on the fast track to character mastery. Buffer, a term that has no fewer than 3 distinct important meanings in the fighting game space. 1. Buffer can refer to a window of time where the game allows you to input a move. Check out buffer window for more on that. 2. Buffer can also refer to a character attacking empty space with a normal, hoping to cancel into a different attack if it hits. Learn more about that at buffered attack. 3. Lastly, buffer can refer to a character rapidly repeating the motion part of a special or super move so they can execute it faster on reaction. I talk more about that at buffered motion. It's a bit unfortunate that the same word is used to describe at least 3 pretty different but common concepts in fighting games, but hopefully context will help you figure out what meaning applies. Senko Nyoroku, or preceding input for buffer window, or shikomi, literally preparation or stocking up for buffered attack. So again, it's like the words used multiple times, but this place puts them all here so you can go and look them up in a handy dandy space. And of course, there's also going to be context and stuff like that too. And of course, a lot of these terms you can kind of figure out without knowing the definition, because of course, if you know what a buffer is or what a buffer does, you'll be like, oh, like that makes sense to me, right? The way it fits in. Cancel. Removing the recovery of an attack, usually so you can transition immediately into another move. By far, the most common instance is canceling a normal attack into a special move. To do this, input the normal and then immediately input the special move. If the normal hits the opponent, it will kind of stop halfway through and the special move will start immediately. Some people call this a special cancel or a 2-in-1, and has formed the basis of Street Fighter and other 2D games for decades. You'll typically see a cancel notated with XX or sometimes the greater than sign, like HBXX Fireball. It's far from the only type of canceling in fighting games though. Sometimes you can cancel a normal into itself, called chaining, or normal into other normals, called a target combo or a string. You might even be able to cancel a move into nothing, recovering instantly and able to take a new action of your choice. For example, with Guilty Gear's Roman cancel. Canceling is a staple of the genre and a concept of every fighting game player should know. Kanseru, literally cancel. Ryu from Street Fighter V cancels his standing HP into a fireball, a super, and then both the fireball and super sequentially. You can often cancel normals into that same normal again, called chaining, or other normals called a target combo. There's often game-specific cancel options like V-Trigger, Instinct Mode from Killer Instinct, or Roman Cancel from Guilty Gear Xrd that will let you play extra creatively. This is something that, like, I need to get better at specifically. Canceling, I think I could do, but a lot of times, because the special moves have interesting inputs that are not as easy to do on a controller or especially on a D-pad, I need to get better at doing that. And different games sometimes have different like windows for entering some of those commands that you have to get used to. I find a lot of times I end up like entering it too early, for example, right? And sometimes I need to wait a little bit longer. An interesting thing about canceling too is that canceling was kind of invented by accident. In the early Street Fighter games, basically it was almost like a bug where they found out if you inputted the next move too fast or at a certain time, it would cancel out of the first move and chain into the second one, and then they made it into a serious staple, which now we all know it's a thing today. Kind of like how video game difficulty was accidentally invented with Space Invaders, about how as like with old Space Invaders, as you killed more of the aliens, they got faster and faster, which made the game more difficult the further you went. And that was actually just a result of the hardware at the time not being so strong, so the more enemies you got rid of on the screen, there's more processing power to move the rest of the enemies on the screen, making them move faster. So they accidentally invented video game difficulty, much like they accidentally invented canceling. It's fascinating to learn about this kind of stuff, and it's not the only example of things that are staples in video games or invented by accident. I've watched a few YouTube videos about those. It's fascinating. Chain. The ability to cancel a light punch or a light kick normal into another light normal. In most 2D games, it's pretty common for characters to use chains to create a basic combo or a block string, and they're a great way to set up easy hit confirms. Chains usually involve crouching normals, but can also use standing normals and may even mix and match them. The difference between a chain and a target combo is that chains tend to deal with light attacks and often repeat the same normal, where target combos usually include medium or heavy attacks and often don't repeat the same button. However, the distinction is pretty skin deep, and you'll hear some people talk about a normal cancel into any other normal, whether it's a light attack or not, as a chain, especially in team games or in some older titles like Darkstalkers. If you apply this looser definition, chaining becomes basically the same thing as a string or a Gatling. You might also hear people talk about linking normal attacks together instead of chaining them. Renda Kanseru. Renda Kanseru. Literally repeated attack cancel. Or a Renkan, or which is an abbreviation of Renda Kanseru. Oh, so reading this reminds me. So like earlier I said before, like, you know, HP could mean like high punch. In some games it also means heavy punch. I think that's actually more common, so apologies. So you'll have like heavy punch, light punch, medium punch, heavy kick, light kick, medium kick, depending on the game you're playing, if it's a 4-button fighter or a 6-button fighter. So the H more often means heavy, not high, because if you want high, you gotta press up. My bad. Ken from Third Strike can chain his crouching LK together up to 3 times before he's pushed out of range. It's common to use this as a hit confirm for a super attack. Ryu from Street Fighter V chains his crouching LP together with a similar idea. Many characters with good chaining moves can start offense from them, like a basic block string into a throw, like Sakura from Street Fighter 4 here. Yeah, so here LK, light kick. Charge. The act of holding a direction, usually back or down, for about 1 second for the purposes of executing certain special moves, like Guile's Sonic Boom. Because charge inputs take a bit of time to prepare before you execute them, they tend to be relatively powerful compared to special moves input using other methods, like a quarter circle, which can be input more quickly and in more situations. Some people find charge inputs and charge characters more intuitive and easier to use, while others find them hard to use. It really just comes down to your personal taste. See, that's the thing too. That's why I'm so bad at doing things like holding the back button to guard, because sometimes you'll be inputting an input to do an attack, and then you'll accidentally move your character in a way you don't want, like moving them backwards or jumping, and I do that all the time. Tame, literally store or accumulate. Chip damage, damage dealt to a character while they are blocking. Most special moves will deal chip damage when blocked. The amount varies by game, but it's usually between 10 to 25% of a move's regular damage. Many games let you KO an opponent via chip damage, although Street Fighter V is a notable modern-day exception. Street Fighter Alpha 3 tried to scold players who performed chip damage KOs by flashing cheap on the screen, but nobody actually felt bad about it. Kezuru Damage, literally chip damage. Guile from Street Fighter V uses sonic booms to do small chip damage to opponents, while Cinder from Killer Instinct uses Shadow Vision to deal huge chip damage. In Alpha 3 and Street Fighter 4, you can KO with chip damage, but in Street Fighter 5, normal special moves cannot kill via chip, only supers can do that. Sonic Boom! Sonic Boom! Combo, a sequence of hits that are unavoidable once the first hit lands. If you want to get technical, a hit will combo from a previous hit if you're still in hit stun from the other attack when the new one lands. Combos are a staple of virtually every fighting game of the last 30 years, and fun, flashy combos are often the selling point for getting players to try a new game. You can't just press two random buttons and have them combo together, of course. The most common ways you will construct combos involve linking or chaining normals together or canceling a normal attack into a special or super attack. In Tekken, strings that will always combo are called natural combos, NC. Or if the first hit needs to be a counter hit for this to work, they'll call it a natural counter combo, or NCC. You may also hear the term full combo, as in this move launches the opponent for a full combo. All the full means here is that your combo choice won't be limited to only a few short, low damage options. Rather, you'll be able to do more or less any combo you want, including many of your characters' bigger damage routes. Some games give you a specific way to get out of a combo, like Killer Instinct's Combo Breaker, Guilty Gear's Burst, or directional influence from Super Smash Bros. But it's pretty rare, and hopefully your favorite game's designers have thought of a way to make sure your combo can't go on forever. That's usually pretty bad. Combo, literally, combo. So when they mention counter hit too, we might hear that a few times. This counter hit is like when you hit your opponent, but they're in the middle of like doing something else. Some games have a mechanic where if you hit someone while they're doing something else, you do more damage, or it can lead to a counter hit, or it can lead to certain combos or certain throws or whatever. Command normal, a normal that requires a direction alongside the button press, usually forward or back. While crouching attacks technically fit this description, we call those crouching normals instead. and reserve this term for special use normals that are quite different from the standard suite of standing, crouching, and air normals your character has. It's common, for instance, that if your character has a grounded overhead attack, it'll be a command normal. You may also see some games refer to these as special attacks. Tokushu waza, literally unique technique. A command throw, a special move that acts as a throw. This is often called a command grab, probably about equally as often as command throw. In the vast majority of games, you cannot throw tech to defend against them, so you'll have to find other ways to escape, such as doing an invincible attack or trying to move out of the way with a jump or a backdash. Command throws are often much longer range than regular throws and can lead to combos or mix-ups that regular throws cannot, and the added difficulty defending against them makes them extra scary. It's an ever-present staple of the grappler toolkit. Commando nage, or command throw, or komanage, which is an abbreviation. Zangief from Street Fighter V shows off his spinning pile driver, perhaps the most famous command throw in fighting games. Thunder, Killer Instinct, does his command throw from way outside his normal throw range. You can get combos after command throws in many games, including Guilty Gear Xrd, like Soul, and Dragon Ball FighterZ, Broly. I love that they give examples from different games, and usually like a variety of different ones. Even within Street Fighter, they're different between Street Fighter 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. I do like that. This is a very good glossary. Corner, the far left and far right edges of a screen in a 2D fighting game. The corner is a bad place to be. You can't walk further back, but your opponent has all the space in the world and can easily choose which range they want to fight at. Lots of characters have special combos that do way more damage and work only if their opponent is in the corner. You're trapped and you have to look for a way to escape. The best case scenario would be to find a way to side switch. Now it's your opponent whose back is to the wall. Gamen hashi, or literally screen edge. And for me, as streamer, usually being in the corner, if it's on the right, even if I force my opponent into there, means that my VTuber model blocks them. Counter hit. Oh, here, we were talking about this earlier. Hitting someone while they're in the startup of an attack. In other words, you interrupted your opponent's attack before it could hit you. A giant message will appear on the screen, usually something like counter, to let you know that you beat them to the punch, and now they'll have to pay for it. Most counter hits get enhanced by dealing more damage and giving more frame advantage, which can open up new combo possibilities. If you're really good, you might even be able to hit confirm certain combos that only work if the start was a counter hit. Some games even take this notion a bit further by implementing extra powerful counter hits. For example, Street Fighter V has the Crush counter, which is a counter hit that grants even more favorable properties than normal. Games like Street Fighter V can even extend the definition of counter hit beyond just getting hit at the start of a move, and make certain moves recover in a counter hit state, so you can get a super fat punish on them. Keep an eye out for the abbreviation CH in combo notation or strategy discussion. Counter hito, or counter hit. While Cammy from Street Fighter V gets counter hit during the startup of an attack, Street Fighter V also sets the recovery of all invincible DPs to be counter hittable, leading to big combos if you block one. Counter hits let you do combos normally not possible. In Tekken 7, Nina shows how some combos will launch on counter hit, and Urien in Street Fighter V recognizes a counter hit during his pressure and does a CH only combo. The thing about fighting games I find so fascinating, like it really is just like a big game of chess, but it's happening really fast, like split-second decisions. And that's what makes them so impressive to watch people that are good at it. And that's why it requires a lot of practice, not just with your character, but also with the entire roster to know what you're up against and stuff. It's fascinating. Cross-up. Attacking your opponent immediately after changing which horizontal side you are facing, usually by jumping over them. Because blocking requires holding the direction away from your opponent in most fighting games, cross-up attacks will force players to quickly switch their blocking direction from left to right or vice versa, or else they will get hit. It is most commonly describes jumping attacks that will hit on top of an opponent's head, sometimes so ambiguously that the defender must guess which direction to block. You might also find other ways to get on the other side of your opponent, like walking under them while they're above you in the air, which we call a cross-under. These are all the variations on the standard 2-option mix-up called the 50-50. Mekuri, literally turning or flipping, or uramawari, go around the back. So cross-ups are, and 50-50s are, you'll hear that a lot when people talk about fighting games. Akuma's jumping MK, Street Fighter V, is a very traditional cross-up move. It can hit in the front if you jump from further away, or in the back, example as a cross-up, if you jump over their head, which makes the defenders switch their blocking direction. Akuma's Demon Flip has options that can hit in the front or back as well. In anime or team games like Skullgirls, be prepared to deal with some extremely brutal cross-ups like Filia's Jump H. Damage scaling, a system that reduces the damage for each hit in a combo more and more as the combo gets longer. So for example, maybe the first 2 hits of your combo do 100% of their regular damage value, but then the third move does 80%, the fourth does 70%, and so on down to some minimum like 10%. Its goal is to try to keep the damage of long combos in check. In a system without damage scaling, open-ended combo systems would get wildly out of control as creative players come up with techniques that the developers didn't foresee. Pretty much every single fighting game beyond the truly ancient ones has some form of damage scaling. It's also similar in concept to proration, which is kind of a per move version of the system. Some games will do both at the same time. Damage Hosei, damage correction. Evil Ryu from Street Fighter 4 does a long combo. Each successive hit does less damage. The number in parentheses is the percentage of the move's normal damage value. In Street Fighter 4, it decreases by 10% each hit to a minimum of 10%. Street Fighter V has a similar system, although crush counters decrease the next hit by 20%, 100% directly to 80%, to keep these combos from doing too much damage. See, I've always kind of understood this, but to see it put into words and with like specific terminology really helps. Like I want to get better at using these words when I'm talking about fighting games. Dash. Tapping the forward or backward direction twice to move your character a short distance across the ground quickly. While dashing, you cannot block, making dashing a riskier way to cover ground than simply walking. In many modern fighting games, dashing backwards, called backdashing, grants you some brief invincibility, which can give you a way to escape your opponent's close-range pressure. In some fighting games, it's possible to dash in the air too. Dashu, which literally means dash. Delayed tech, trying to defend against being thrown by inputting a throw tech a little late on purpose. Delayed tech, also called a late tech, is an option select. You want to try and block in case they attack, and if they throw, pressing the button slightly late means you will still successfully throw tech, since the window for teching throws can take a little longer. This is one of the first defensive techniques new players should learn if they're playing a Street Fighter-like game, since it lets them defend against basic attacks and basic throws at the same time. Powerful stuff. It's not foolproof though. Once you get into intermediate play, a player can just slightly delay their own attack to counter hit your late tech attempt. When your opponent hesitates like this, they can open up other ways for you to defend too. You'll start to see the mind games of offense and defense when you get good at stuff like this, but start with delayed techs first. Okurase grapple, literally delayed grapple. Like this is where you get into like the real like nitty-gritty stuff, like the mind games. Obviously things like 50-50s and mix-ups are already mind games already, but even just like how fast you input the buttons as you're doing it and changing that to suit your opponent and having them respond in kind, it really is like chess. Very fast. Watch the inputs on the right side of the screen. Ibuki from Street Fighter V presses the throw tech button intentionally a little late to defend against a strike and throw with the same timing. The goal is to try and tech after you block a move, but before the throw tech window would run out. It's great that a lot of fighting games now in training mode and stuff have a lot of this information for you, like frame data, inputs, and all that stuff, damage percentage, to help you figure this stuff out instead of having to figure it out on your own. Dive kick, an aerial attack that accelerates quickly towards the ground, foot first. Dive kicks are potent offensive weapons because they change how you move through the air, and often characters can choose multiple angles for the dive kick's approach, making it super annoying to anti-air them. Playing a character with a good dive kick means you should be spending a lot of time in the air, irritating your opponent who just wants to live their best life on the ground. Daibu kiku, literally dive kick, or Raigikishu, lightning kick, named after Yun and Yang's dive kick. Yun from Third Strike has a powerful dive kick with 3 different angles. Use it to harass your opponent non-stop while also building meteor for Jine Jin. Cammy from Street Fighter V gets access to a scary dive kick during her V-trigger, which can hit you in an instant and lead to a combo. There's even an entire fighting game called Dive Kick, where the only two things you can do are dive, jump, and kick. I've actually heard about that game. Actually, I think I have it on Steam because I thought it'd be funny to try out. Oh, this is the game, Dive Kick. That looks kind of fun. I like how the characters are named Dive and Kick as well. And like, again, it's like, it's interesting because then as you play different fighting games, you'll learn like each character's play style and see like what is their bread and butter and the ways that they get their combos and stuff like that too. And how like there's different play styles as well. Like aerial characters, for example, completely different than playing grounded character. Dragon Punch, a powerful rising uppercut attack that's great for anti-air and usually invincible, making it great for reversal attacks. A Dragon Punch, or DP as commonly abbreviated, is a big catch-all term for any motion attack, usually a DP motion, that sees the character attack towards the air with their fist, usually leaving their feet. They were first seen with Ryu and Ken's Shoryuken attacks in Street Fighter 2, and as such, usually most Shotos have a version of it, but this style of attack is now extremely common in dozens of fighting games and hundreds of fighting game characters. This term basically is synonymous with Shoryuken and uppercut, although DP is the most common just because it's catchy and short. Shoryuken, literally rising dragon fist. So this is where, like, you know, Street Fighter being a pioneer for its time, a lot of its terms have just become synonymous with other things like Shoryuken, for example, right? Or Hadouken motion or Shoryuken motion. Ryu and Ken demonstrate their Dragon Punches in Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 5. This iconic move is in virtually every fighting game. Vegeta has a version in Dragon Ball FighterZ that leads to a combo, and classic Guilty Gear characters Soul and Kai from Guilty Gear Strive have versions as well. So you can see from like Soul and Kai, not all Dragon Punches or like Dragon Punches are actually punches either. Like they're using their swords and stuff. Drop, an input mistake that ends a combo before it was supposed to finish. Whether you mistimed an attack, input the wrong special move by accident, or just froze up and forgot what you were supposed to do, you blew it. Some drops aren't serious, you might end up just losing a small bit of damage, but the match continues normally otherwise. But some drops can be pretty catastrophic and lead you wide open for a punishment. Try to avoid these if you can. Misu, literally, miss. EX move, a more powerful version of a special move, enhanced by spending some super meter. These moves have better properties than the base version of the special move, which may include more invincibility, more damage, or faster startup. The character often glows a different color, like yellow, while performing an EX move, just to make it extra clear what's happening. While the term originated in Vampire Survivor and was made popular by Street Fighter games, it's now a common staple of the genre, even if the game gives it a different name, like Mortal Kombat's Meter Burn. The letters E and X are pronounced separately. I like how they even specify that, so it's not like X move. Street Fighter 6 renames X move to the Overdrive move to match the drive system theme. X Hisatsu Waza, literally EX killing technique. An EX move is an enhanced version of a regular special move, common in all modern and many older Street Fighter games. Third Strike, Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5. You'll usually flash yellow and spend some super meter when you do one. I didn't know this term originated from Vampire Survivor. That's interesting. Like not even like a fighting game. Fierce, another name for heavy punch. It's the most satisfying alternate name for a normal attack. Even just hearing the word makes you want to press the button. Daipan, literally big punch. I like this flavor text, you know, like even just hearing the word makes you want to press the button. It kind of makes it the definition a little bit more lighthearted but fun. A fireball, a special type of projectile that travels horizontally and is traditionally input using a quarter circle command. Ryu, Sagat, Jago, and Soul all throw fireballs and are perhaps the most iconic special moves in all of fighting games. Beams that travel the whole screen instantaneously or instantly, and sonic booms that require a charge to execute aren't usually called fireballs. Fireball can even be used as a shorthand for a quarter circle forward if you're trying to quickly describe a special move input. The input for your command dash is fireball kick would be a valid sentence, for example. Hadouken, literally wave motion fist, you know, Ryu's signature move. Fireballs are classic special moves across many fighting game characters, including Ryu, Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 5, Soul Bad Guy, Guilty Gear Xrd, and Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. Grand Blue shout out. See, again, I appreciate that they choose a variety of different games to show off a lot of these things. Even ones like Grand Blue or Dive Kick, or ones that are not ones that are actively contributing to the vernacular. First two, playing a set where the overall winner is the first player to win a certain number of games, commonly abbreviated to FT followed by the number of wins required, such as FT10. Most tournament sets will be FT2 or FT3 depending on which game is being played. Hon Senshu, literally first two games, or Saki, first two, whatever number it is. Footsies, a complicated, often nebulous term that refers to the battle for controlling the space in front of you, often by using good pokes. In essence, you're trying to get to a range you like while trying to deny your opponent getting to a range that they like. How you do this varies wildly based on the game, but often involves using strong crouching kick attacks to pester your opponent as they're trying to walk around. This dance of playing mind games at your feet is the source of the term's name. In reality, footsies can mean different things to different people, and often combines a lot of adjacent concepts. Some people think that footsies need to be a grounded affair, between characters that don't jump and fight for space only by walking. While this is a good example, I think applying the term narrow-mindedly to only these situations is falling out of favor. As more people play more diverse fighting games, they realize that you get the feel of footsies in lots of different ways, and this battle for space can extend to the air or movement options beyond walking quite easily. That said, using amazing footsies to perform an awesome whiff punish will never fall out of style. Chijosen, literally ground fight, or Sashi-ai, literally the act of attacking while weaving in and out of each other's attack range. Sashi-ai, or stabbing match, or Ashibarai Gasan, leg sweep battle. Watch how these players use movement and attacks to try and convince their opponent to swing with a bad button, which lets them counterattack. Players in order are Deshiken, Ken Third Strike, Daigo, Ryu, Street Fighter 4, Punk and Tokido, Karen and Akuma, Street Fighter V, and SKD, Izayoi, Blaze Blue, demonstrating that footsies can extend to the air as well. There's even a game called Footsies, designed to test this skill.
And you saw those instant blocks from a moment ago, that allowed...
Oh, this one looks so funny. Maybe that would be a good way to practice like basic fighting game techniques, is play this game like footsies or dive kick. Let's watch these again, but listen to the commentary.
Oh, great comeback. And we're back to this middle of the road, or middle of the...
Hasn't been parried yet for that by Tokido, which I think if you're Punk is very, very fortunate. Fierce. Looking low. He backdashes afterwards, trying to reset the space. Oh, wow,
what a
that
punish.
was
That's
crazy.
Ridiculous. And you saw those instant blocks from a moment ago, that allowed...
This looks so fun, actually. The thing is, like, again, like, I really like fighting games. I think it'd be so cool to, like, make a fighting game or put my characters in a fighting game one day. But you require a lot of knowledge about a lot of these things to make one, right? You can't just throw in characters, make cool moves, and make a fighting game. You gotta have an understanding about all these core mechanics and how it plays. So, mad respect to people that make fighting games, especially indie devs. Forward, another name for medium kick. Low forward means crouching medium kick, and is a common phrase you'll hear in Street Fighter games. And of course, it could also mean holding forward on the analog stick. Yes, that means if you want to talk about a command normal that uses medium kick while holding the forward direction, you might have to parse the phrase forward forward at some point. Chu kiku, or medium kick, or chu ashi, medium leg, which is only used for low attacks. Frame. Oh, here, this will be useful because we've heard this one thrown around a lot. A unit used to measure time in a fighting game. Most fighting games operate at 60 frames per second, which means one frame is 1/60th of a second, or about 16 milliseconds, and you can't break this unit down any further. A frame is the core unit used in frame data, which measures the properties of moves in fighting games, such as how long they take to execute or which character gets to act first if a move is blocked. Some players, especially beginners, get intimidated when the word frame comes up, as if it's some arcane magic. If this is you, instead try to think of a frame as a relative unit. Let's say move A starts up in 3 frames and move B starts up in 4 frames. You might think, why do we care about a 16 millisecond difference? There's no way to visually tell the difference between these, and you'd be absolutely right. Don't think of it that way. Instead, think that move B is 1 frame slower than move A. So in situations where both fighters get to attack at the same time, move A is going to hit first. Imagine it as a way to compare two moves rather than something you're supposed to notice visually, and you'll find yourself making sense of it more quickly. Frame, literally frame. I appreciate that they write the second paragraph to help you ease into it as someone who might be newer. That's really nice. Time in fighting games is broken down into frames, usually 60 per second. You'll measure everything about a move's timing based on this fundamental unit. This is a killer instinct. Frame advantage describes who recovers first when a move hits or is blocked. If you use an attack that recovers before the opponent leaves block stun or hit stun, you get control of your character back first and can attack before the opponent if you want. This means you have frame advantage, and it's the same thing as being plus. You can also just ask what's the frame advantage on that move to find out if you're plus or minus. Having positive frame advantage is a bit stronger than just merely being safe, since being safe will also include a few moves that are minus, just not so minus they can be punished. You'll hear people give advice like, I'm advantaged there, so don't press a button. When you're first picking up fighting games, you should pay attention. Yuri frame, literally advantage frame. Frame data, a complete list of the inner workings of every move in a fighting game. Pretty much everything will be measured with frames, a fighting game's fundamental building block of time. You can learn the startup, active, and recovery frames of each move, what the frame advantage is when the move hits or is blocked, how much damage each move does, or any other special properties the move might have, like hitting overhead or low. Frame data can intimidate people because it's a giant spreadsheet that looks pretty overwhelming, but really frame data is not intended to be memorized like a list of formulas for your high school math class. The two most important numbers are the startup of a move, how fast is it, and how safe or unsafe the move is if it gets blocked, how risky is it to use. When you're getting started with frame data, you could generally skip all the other numbers and focus on these. Look for fast moves and safe moves, and then try these out in matches and see how you do. Then when you get more practice with the game, the other numbers will make more sense naturally. Frame hyo, or frame table. Oh, nice, an animated GIF. A visualization of what some frame data for a fighting game move might tell you. Startup is one of the most important numbers to know. Frame trap. Two attacks back to back that leave a very small gap between them. The gap will be shorter than the defender's fastest attack, which means if they try to attack with a normal, they will get counter hit. Finding effective frame traps requires some basic understanding of frame data, or finding a good YouTube tutorial that has done the work for you. You'll usually be looking for an attack that is plus on block, which lets you attack before your opponent afterwards, then swinging with a fast attack that traps your opponent, who foolishly thought they could swing themselves. Frame traps aren't foolproof though. You could usually just continue to block and be fine until your opponent gets pushed out of range. Or, if you're feeling risky, you could try to get through the opponent's attack with an invincible reversal, which doesn't care about your opponent's pesky frame advantage. Abure Tsubushi, literally Rage Crusher. Jagel's forward HK from Killer Instinct is +2 on block. There'll be a gap before the next normal, but if you both try to attack, Jagel will frame trap you. To get out of situations like this, one option is to keep blocking. If Jagel keeps attacking, he'll eventually get pushed out of range. Or you could try an invincible reversal. Neither is foolproof, but they are options to keep in mind. So I think we've gone through all the frame definitions, which has been really useful. I've always understood in general, again, what they meant, but hearing it put into words and putting it into this is what is important to know from each one is very helpful. Gap. How long your characters return to neutral in between blocking or getting hit by two attacks. Like all discussions of time in fighting games, it's measured in frames. While you're in neutral, you can take any action, but be careful. If you're only in neutral for a few brief frames, there are some actions you won't want to take, especially if your opponent is looking to do a frame trap. If your character blocks two attacks and there's no gap at all, we'll call that a true block string, or say the offense is tight. It's also quite related to the Tekken concept of jailing. Sometimes players will just ask, is there a gap in that string? Just so they know whether they even have option to do anything except block. Maybe there's a gap, they'll sometimes try a reversal to escape. Tsukima, literally meaning gap. In Street Fighter V, Laura's standing HP cancelled to Thunderclap has a 3-frame gap. This means characters with 3-frame normal attacks like Juri can interrupt her. If you try slower moves, you'll either trade 4 frames or just straight up lose 5 frames or worse, because you don't have enough time. You can of course always use an invincible move to squeeze through any gap, but your opponent can also just not cancel the move to bait you, so watch out. Grappler, a character whose primary offensive tools are throws and command throws. Grapplers usually move and jump slowly and fight poorly from long distances, but are terrifying when they get close to their opponent and apply their very strong throw-based mix-ups. Examples include Zangief from Street Fighter and Potemkin from Guilty Gear. A character that frequently uses command throws but has better ways to move around the screen than traditional grapplers are sometimes called hybrid or pseudo-grapplers. Grappler players live for that one moment where they can get close and win back all the damage they took trying to close the gap. Naga Kiara, literally a throw character. Guess, taking an action when you aren't sure if that action will have a good outcome. For example, you might have to guess which direction you'll block for an ambiguous cross-up attack, since you don't know which side you'll get hit on, or you might be getting rushed down by offensive characters and have to make a guess on whether to throw tech or block. If your guess is based on some specific information from your opponent, you might call it a read instead, but the two terms are pretty similar. Guesses are important because fighting games are too fast to flawlessly react to everything, which means sometimes you have to act without knowing all the information. Except that sometimes you'll guess right, and sometimes you'll guess wrong, and fighting games will be a lot more fun. I know I keep saying how great this glossary is, but like, even, defining words like guess, which is, a normal everyday word which you could probably understand from context, but putting it in the context of a fighting game and linking it to other articles is super useful. High, synonymous with an overhead attack in most 2D fighting games, although overhead is the term most frequently used for these games. A high is a much more common term in Tekken, Soul Calibur, Virtua Fighter, and Mortal Kombat, referring to an attack that will whiff on crouching opponents. You'll hear phrases like, you can duck the high often. Like the similarly confusing mid, it's especially difficult to keep straight if you play both 2D and 3D games often. Note that in Street Fighter 6, the word high is used in its training mode to refer to an attack that can be blocked both standing and crouching. Basically what most people would call a mid. Wow, this really is a mess, isn't it? Jodan, literally high level, or Jodan Kogeki, high level attack. Most commonly used in 3D games like Tekken 7, a high attack can be blocked standing and will whiff against crouching opponents. In most 2D games like Street Fighter V, a high or overhead must be blocked standing and hits crouching opponents. Hits confirm. Performing an attack, seeing that your attack successfully hit, and then reacting to this information by continuing the combo. That is to say, you confirm your first attack hit before you launch further attacks. And if the attack was blocked instead, you stop and don't follow through with anything else. This is important because usually you'll be canceling into a move that would be unsafe if it was blocked. So you only want to do it if you won't get you killed. In some games, this can be a pretty advanced skill, since you might not have a lot of time to recognize if your attack hit or not. In really fast cases, good players may even employ special tricks like looking at the opponent's health bar or using special audio cues to help them react as fast as they can. Hito kakunin, or hit confirm. Ken from Third Strike does his MP HP target combo, a safe pressure tool which gives him enough time to see if it hits or not. He does super only on hit. Hit confirming off a single attack is possible as well depending on the character. Jago from Killer Instinct has a huge amount of time after his overhead, but Karen from Street Fighter V does not have much time after crouching MK and needs great reactions to hit confirm it. Jamie from Street Fighter 6 shows that you can also hit confirm using a link. That is, you don't necessarily have to cancel the move you're trying to hit with. Man, it's one thing to read about all these things, it's another to see them in action, let alone do them yourself. Invincible, a state where you're impossible to hit, fully impervious to everything. Invincible moves usually just remove all your hurt boxes so no incoming attack or throw can connect with you. As you can imagine, invincible attacks are very strong, so they're usually very unsafe or risky to attempt, and are commonly used as a reversal in situations where your opponent has a clear attacking advantage, like on Wake Up. Many dragon punches and supers have some period of invincibility to them, and these are common to see used in most fighting games. Also note that some moves may be invincible only to certain things and not others. You might see throw invincible, strike invincible, or projectile invincible moves. You might see terms like high crush and low crush thrown around too. Muteki, or invincible. Jago from Killer Instinct is able to completely avoid Rash's attack by using an invincible Dragon Punch. A closer look shows that he has no hollow green hurtbox during the start of this move, so there's nothing for Rash to hit. You can also be invincible only to certain types of attacks, like projectiles, Jago's Shadow Wind Kick, or throws, the start of Thunder's command throw. I appreciate they use a lot of Killer Instinct too, because Killer Instinct, even though it's not like one of the big, super well-known fighting games, has contributed a lot to the creation and build-up of fighting games too. Jab, another name for light punch. This one's pretty common and easy to understand. You might also hear this called one jab in a game like Tekken, based on Tekken's notation, using one for a left punch. There's super fast check moves you can use to keep your opponent off balance. You might also hear dick jab to refer to a crouching jab, typically in 3D games. I probably don't need to explain that one. Kopan, literally small punch. Juggle, the act of comboing an airborne opponent while you're on the ground. Moves that work well in juggles tend to launch the opponent high into the air and keep them close to the offensive player, so they can be hit again as they fall to the ground. As with a lot of fighting game terminology, the line between a juggle and an air combo is sometimes up for debate, so you might see the term used to describe any situation where you're comboing someone in the air. Kuchu combo, or air combo. The Tekken series is known for its prolonged juggle combos. Here, Julia from Tekken 7 does a basic juggle after a down parry. Third Strike Dudley shows off one of his many stylish juggle combos. Knockdown, being knocked off your feet and landing on your back. Certain attacks commonly cause knockdowns like sweeps, throws, and many special moves, and in some games simply getting hit out of the air. There are generally two types of knockdowns, hard knockdowns and soft knockdowns, which describe how long you have to lie on the ground before you can get up and fight again, and what options you have, if any, when standing up. In most games, when you're lying on your back, you are invincible to all attacks except if a game employs OTG moves. The moment you stand up and become vulnerable again, called the wake-up game or okizemi, is an incredibly important cornerstone of virtually every fighting game. If you're on offense, you may choose to attack with a meaty, or execute some planned mix-up or set play. If you're rising from the knockdown, you usually should try to block, but you may also choose reversal to escape, or try to abare your way out. Knockdowns can lead to huge swings in the match, and learning to maximize your advantage in these situations and play the mind games well will earn you lots of wins. Down for down. Launcher, a move that launches the opponent high into the air, usually for more combo opportunities. Most modern fighting games have moves that launch the opponent and allow for some type of combo extension. For example, the Tekken series uses launchers as a staple combo mechanic that most characters frequently use. Having a fast or safe launcher in Tekken can be the sign of a strong character. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 cuts directly to chase and simply has a universal button called Launcher that can start all sorts of fancy air combos. Ukase Waza, literally floating technique. It's interesting too, because seeing a lot of these like Japanese terms as well, being used not just in fighting games, but also in like real life martial arts. Like I've heard a lot of these like in the dojo, for example. Tekken has many strong launching attacks, like Julia from Tekken 7 shows here. Lots of other games also have stacks that launch the opponent into the air for a combo, including Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Kill Instinct. Dragon Ball FighterZ even lets you do certain launches in midair to launch even higher. Leverless, a type of controller that has the layout of an arcade stick for its attack buttons, but replaces the joystick lever with 4 buttons that control up, down, left, and right. Usually, the button for up is placed low on the controller within reach of the thumbs of both hands, which can make tiger knee inputs very easy. In addition to leverless, you may hear it called a hitbox, which was the name of the company that produced the first commercially available leverless device. You may also hear generic terms such as all-button controller, button box, or sarcastically, cheat box, since the device lets you do some things a normal arcade stick struggles with. Leverless controllers can be rather difficult to get used to at first, since a lot of your muscle memory for a regular stick or controller is lost, but the benefits for some games can be very high. Games like Tekken, where there are difficult just frame inputs for moves like electrics, are now much easier, since pressing 2 buttons is much more consistent than timing the movement of a joystick to a button press. It also takes less time to press a button than to move a joystick, which means your movement can be much crisper and you can do some moves faster on reaction. Leverless devices have to be careful about SOCD inputs, which can sometimes create techniques that break a game if they aren't handled properly. Mixbox is also a very similar device. Reberesu Contorora, leverless controller. Hitoboxu. Oh yeah, I've seen these. See, that's what I'm like. When I use a controller to play fighting games, oftentimes I'll use the D-pad instead of the analog stick, because if you do like a certain movement, like diagonal down, I just find it easier to try to press the down and the right at the same time instead of trying to angle the joystick at the right timing, because sometimes it moves or it doesn't catch the input at the right time. But then the D-pad hurts my finger more. I should try learning how to use like a fight stick, but I don't really have a reason to invest in one right now. Link, a technique where two moves can combo into each other by letting the first move entirely complete, including its recovery before starting the second move. It's different from a cancel, which interrupts the first move by skipping its recovery and going into the second move early. In order for two moves to link into each other, the first move needs to be plus on hit by at least as much as the second move's startup. This way, the opponent is trapped in hit stun the whole time that has to eat the combo. Links are common in Street Fighter games, but some games are more focused on chains and strings and don't rely on links much at all. You'll hear phrases like link together or you have to link it to indicate you need to wait for the first move to completely finish before trying the second move. Meoshi, literally press the button at the right time. It's a slang from pachinko and slots. Cammy from Street Fighter V can link crouching MP into crouching MP. Notice how she fully recovers back to neutral while Chun-Li is still in hit stun and can complete a combo. You have to pick the right move though. If you pick something too slow, in this case Cammy's standing HB, the two attacks won't link. Cody from Street Fighter 4 shows multiple links in a row and demonstrates how sometimes you can link certain normals into a super attack. Low, an attack that must be blocked in a crouching position. Since most fighting games don't let you block both low and high at the same time, low attacks, usually crouching kick normals, are intended to beat a standing guard. In most fighting games, this means you need to hold both down and away from your opponent on the analog stick, which means you cannot walk backwards while trying to block a low attack. Low attacks are good. You can use them to catch people who try to walk backwards out of your pressure, or who expect to be hit by an overhead instead. You'll see this term used like must be blocked low or hits low. It can also refer to the crouching version of a normal, for example, low medium kick. See also mids and overheads. Gedan, or low level, or Gedan Kogeki, low level attack. Low attack must be blocked crouching or else it will hit you. This is common in both 2D games like Street Fighter V and 3D games like Tekken 7. Matchup. A strategy and game knowledge that applies for one specific character against another specific character. You can use the term generally, such as I struggle in the Ryu versus Guile matchup, or in the Sagat matchup, you try not to jump very often. It's also quite common to try to measure one character's advantage over another by stating how many games out of 10 they should win if two high-level players of equal skill played against each other. Opinions differ on exactly how to interpret the numbers, but here's a generally accepted meaning. 5-5 is an equal matchup. 6-4 is a favorable matchup, but the disadvantaged character can still win without huge difficulty. 7-3 is a quite favorable matchup. The winning character does not have to take many risks to win, but can still lose with few key reads by the opponent. Most modern games have a few 7-3s, but not much worse. 8-2 is a very favorable matchup. The winning character almost wins by default with one or two dominating strategies. 9-1, the matchup is so favorable that it is almost literally nothing the opponent can do to stand any chance of winning. These basically don't exist in modern fighting games. 10-0 is the worst matchup in fighting game history. An incredibly easy strategy dominates the match with absolutely zero counterplay possible. Matchup numbers are often for debate, especially since people of different skill and knowledge are discussing it, but there is a real value in the discussion nonetheless. You can make matchup charts this way, which might give insight into a game's balance. Kumi awase, literally matching and pairing. That's really interesting. Like, I've heard people talk about this before, but obviously you have to be on a high level to really understand it, or like really make these types of assumptions. Oh, we've seen this one a few times. Meaty, a term with two distinct but sometimes overlapping definitions. The most common definition of meaty is an attack that hits an opponent on the very first frame, possible after they rise from a knockdown, or other similar situations like being flipped out. This guarantees the opponent must either block the attack or immediately do an invincible move like a dragon punch. If they just press any random button, they will get counter hit because their attack still has to go through its non-hitting startup, but your attack is already active on top of them. Learning how to time a meaty is extremely important to fighting game strategy. You can often just beat beginners by meatying them out over and over as they insist on attacking at all times. The other definition of meaty is an attack that makes contact with the opponent not on its first active frame like normal, but on later active frame instead. This will generate the same hit stun or block stun, but you'll recover sooner and you'll generate more frame advantage, and possibly unlock some new combos. These two definitions often go hand in hand. When you attack someone as they rise from a knockdown, sometimes your attack won't hit on the first active frame, but rather some later frame. That would be a meaty that hits meaty. A little confusing for sure, but just wait until you try to understand what a fuzzy is. Kasane, literally to stack or overlap, or jizoku ate, continuous or lasting hit. Well, they didn't put fuzzy into the common term, so... Jago from Killer Instinct does a meaty attack after a combo. Notice the red hitboxes are on top of the opponent when they rise from the knockdown. If they try to press a regular attack, they'll just get counter hit. The defender has to use something invincible, like a dragon punch, to go through the meaty. Ryu from Third Strike shows how you can use a meaty's extra frame advantage to do combos normally not possible. I really appreciate when they slow down, they actually show you the frames and the colors. Mid, in a 2D fighting game, an attack that can be blocked in either standing or crouching position. The vast majority of attacks in 2D games are mid attacks, which means choosing to block in any direction is all that's needed to survive against them. Attacks that must be blocked crouching are called lows, while attacks that must be blocked standing are called overheads. In 3D games like Tekken and Virtua Fighter, hitting mid instead refers to an attack that must be blocked standing, what a 2D game would call an overhead. It's a good example of just how confusing fighting games terminology can be, and how 2D and 3D games can use the same term for different purposes. Kind of like how reversal also changes its meaning. It's just one of those annoying things you have to get used to, unfortunately. Jodan Kogeki, literally high-level attack, in 2D games can be blocked standing or crouching. Chudan Kogeki, literally a mid-level attack, in 3D games must be blocked standing. In most traditional 2D games, here, Street Fighter V, a mid attack can be blocked standing or crouching. In 3D games, like Tekken 7, a mid must be blocked standing and will hit anyone trying to crouch block. Again, like the way they highlight the difference between 2D and 3D and how it's used differently, brilliant. I mean, not the terminology is brilliant, but like this glossary is really good. A minus, when you cannot freely act but your opponent can, usually because you're too busy recovering from your own move. It's not too much fun to be minus or negative in a fighting game. First of all, if you're too minus, you can be punished. And even if you're only slightly minus, if you and your opponent attack as soon as possible with attacks that have the same startup, you always lose the race and get hit. Being minus and being plus are two sides of the same coin. When you are minus, your opponent is plus, and vice versa. You'll almost always use it with the phrase on block, as in, my fireball is -3 on block. That means you will fully recover 3 frames after your opponent leaves block stun. Being slightly minus is not the end of the world, but you'll probably have to block after and not try to take your turn. Throwing caution to the wind and swinging with an attack while you're minus is called abare. Fury means disadvantage. Cammy from Street Fighter V is -3 on block after crouching MK. If both characters hold up, a slow motion view shows green Cammy jumping 3 frames behind. Ibuki's crouching MP is -1 on block. It doesn't sound like much, but you'll always lose the race if you try to attack afterwards. Being extremely minus is very bad. Aganos from Killer Instinct is -57 after natural disasters blocked, giving his opponent an easy punish. Mix-up, a situation where the offensive player has several ways to attack that each require a different defensive action to stop, such as blocking in different directions and avoiding throws. Most mix-ups contain several fast options that are extremely difficult or impossible to avoid on reaction. Thus, the defensive player must take a read to escape taking damage. Simple mix-ups that only require choosing between two defensive options are often called 50-50s. Very powerful mix-ups can exist which force a defender to choose between 4 or 5 different options. You would call these 4-way or 5-way mix-ups. For example, the attacker might attack high or low on both sides and could also throw. Taku means choice. Saber Wolf from Killer Instinct shows a basic mix-up after you block his jumping attack. He can hit you low, hit you overhead, throw you, or dash through and hit you on the other side. You'll defend against each option differently and may need to preemptively guess what's coming to avoid getting hit. Double from Skullgirl shows a mix-up that hits behind, in front, and with an air throw after a reset. Hey Joji, welcome to the stream. Neutral, the stage of a fight where neither player is blocking or getting hit by anything, and you are trying to figure out the best way to start or continue your game plan. There's also a bit of an implicit assumption that the characters are not point blank from each other, so there's some wiggle room to move around and use a wide assortment of attacks. Footsies is one important aspect of playing the neutral game, and you'll often hear people talk about the neutral. For example, Ryu loses the neutral in that matchup, means that Ryu has a hard time finding a place on screen where he can start his game plan without putting himself at risk. You may also hear the term occasionally used to describe any time your character is not blocking, being hit, or knocked down, even if you're point blank, and your character is able to take any action. If your opponent attacks you with a string, you might say, I return to neutral in the middle of that string. It's quite a bit less common than the first definition though, and most people will just say there's a gap there to indicate that the pressure is not airtight. Neutral, literally neutral, or tachi mawari, walking around. Normal, a basic attack usually activated by a single button press. In most fighting games, you will have different normals if you're standing on the ground, holding down to crouch, or jumping. A normal used while jumping at the opponent is often called a jump in. And some characters may have special attacks called command normals, if you hold a direction while pressing a button. Some fighting games also have different normals depending on how close you're standing to your opponent. Normals aren't nearly as flashy as special moves, but they're extremely important and will often form the backbone of your strategy. Don't overlook them. Sujo waza, literally normal move. Also, I didn't mention this earlier, but I think it's convenient you could also like directly link to these words too, like there's a little link button too, if you want to like show someone else. Oh, this one's a long one. Oh, but this one's a really useful one, because I understand this, but I think a lot of people have trouble getting this. Notation, a common language used to refer to directions and attacks so it's easier to talk about fighting games. I'll use this glossary entry to outline a few of the familiar notation styles that every player should know. Attacks. You shouldn't use the names of your console's buttons like X or square to talk about attacks, since it's not universal. Instead, use abbreviations for moves themselves. A 6-button fighter will use LP, MP, HP for punches. So that's low punch, medium punch, or no, sorry, not low, light, medium, heavy punch for punches. And LK, MK, HK for kicks, or light, medium, heavy, kick. Anime games might use ABC or LMH for light, medium, and heavy attacks, as well as a unique attack button like S or D. Tekken and Mortal Kombat use numbers for their attacks, specifically 1 and 2 for punches, and 3 or 4 for kicks. Directions. Many games use one lowercase letter for each cardinal direction. D for down, U for up, F for forward, and B for back. Leaving your stick in a neutral position is N, or some games like Tekken will use a star. Note that nobody uses left, right, but rather terms that are relative to where your opponent is. Diagonals like down and back will be DB or D/B. Common special move inputs will also have abbreviations, often with direction attached. Quarter circle or QCF or QCB, half circle, HCF or HCB, and DP, DP or RDP, reverse DP. It's also quite common to see numpad notation, which uses numbers instead of letters. It's unfortunate that sometimes numbers will mean a direction, and sometimes they'll mean an attack. But like most confusing things in fighting games, you'll get used to the context over time. See, I think that's really important too, because a lot of people I know that are getting into the fighting games for the first time don't understand that like you can't just do left and right, because you could be standing on the right side or the left side of the screen, which reverses the directions. Or when I'm showing a fighting game to a friend for the first time, they'll be like, well, why doesn't it just just say X or square or triangle? Why does it say A, B, and C, for example? It's because you could be playing with a different controller, especially if the game is on PC, and they need to make it universal for all the players playing the game regardless of what console they're on. But it is confusing for a normie to get into because they're expecting to see the button on their controller or their keyboard, for example. Personally, I prefer the number rotation. So, for example, instead of quarter circle forward, you do 2, 3, 6, which if you look at your numpad is like directions of 2, 3, and 6, as if number 5 was in the center of your stick. I just thought I prefer that as a way to write, but everyone has their own preferences. And again, they did say sometimes numbers are used to denote attacks as well, so it could get confusing. Modifiers. Here are some common ways attacks can be modified. Talk about close and far normals with CL and F. For example, CL HP. Talk about standing and crouching normals with S, ST, and CR. For example, CR HP. If you see C by itself, this usually means crouching, but it's ambiguous with close, so we should try to avoid it. Talk about jumping attacks with J. For example, JHP. Moves that are cancelled from a previous attack are separated with X, XX, or the arrow. For example, CRMK, XX, quarter circle forward, HP. This isn't an exhaustive list, but hopefully it gives you enough to understand most examples. Hyoki literally means notation, or Commando Hyoki, command notations. I think this one's so useful that it could be like its own article. Oh, here's the numpad notation. They have a separate entry for it. Numpad notation. A way to describe joystick inputs using numbers instead of letters or words. Each direction is mapped to a number following the same layout as a keyboard's numpad. For example, holding down is 2. If you want to talk about a crouching medium kick, you'll call it 2MK. Or holding forward and pressing punch would be 6P, a common Guilty Gear anti-air. You can also describe special move inputs this way. For example, a standard quarter circle forward would be 2-3-6, and a DP motion would be 6-3 or 6-2-3. Note that numpad notation always assumes you're facing right. QCF is always 2-3-6 no matter which way your character is pointing. Numpad notation could be used for pretty much every game, although the Mortal Kombat and English-speaking Tekken communities use numbers for attack buttons rather than directions in their notation, so be careful of that. In particular, it is preferred among fans of anime games since it is language independent, letting people share combo notation and strategies between cultures in ways that QCF can struggle to do. It also lets you describe moves or techniques with wacky inputs very precisely, which makes it versatile and succinct. While some people find it easier to parse notation when English abbreviations are used, there's no denying that numpad notation has some strong advantages. You should be comfortable understanding both methods, especially since it only takes a few minutes to learn. Tenki Hyoki, literally 10-key notation. I didn't even consider that this is really useful for like cross-language sharing. This is a really good gift too. Very to the point. Okizeme. The moment during a fighting game when your opponent is knocked down and you get to attack them as they stand back up. The defender's options are limited, so the offensive player gets to attack with all sorts of mix-ups or apply any mind games they choose. Some options include attacking with a basic meaty, doing a cross-up, or trying to bait their opponent's desperate dragon punch by simply doing nothing and blocking. Okizeme, pronounced Okizeme, often shortened to Oki, means wake-up offense in Japanese, so the term mostly focuses on the offensive choices. If you hear someone ask, what's the Oki going to be, they're wondering what method of attack or non-attack the offensive player will choose to assert their advantage. It's closely related to the term wake-up, although this tends to focus more on the defensive choices. You might hear, I can't believe they did a wake-up DP. If someone asks, do I get Oki after this move, they're asking whether that move leaves them close enough, and with enough time to threaten multiple different offensive options. Moves that don't just give you Oki will leave you far away and mostly end your offensive pressure. Okizeme, literally wake-up offense. So this is another word that I've heard in the dojo, because it's something that we talk about when you're doing martial arts. So it's only natural they would use it with fighting games as well. Jago from Killer Instinct knocks Glacius down and then applies some basic pressure to his wake-up. Relatively safe options include going low, throwing, or doing a safe jump. If he thinks Glacius will reversal, he can block and punish, or he can apply some freeform offense and try to be unpredictable. The totality of how the offense tries to outthink the defense in this situation describes what Okizeme is about. Seeing all these Killer Instinct videos kind of makes me want to play Killer Instinct. It's a fighting game that I have not had too much experience with because it's historically mostly been on Xbox, but now is widely available on PC. On block, how you describe what happens after a move is blocked. You could talk about general strategy, like in Killer Instinct, Riptor's shoulder charge will cause a stance change on block. But by far the most common use of this phrase is to discuss frame advantage, like crouching MK is -2 on block. Since how safe or unsafe a move is on block is one of the most important considerations for how you'll use that move. Not surprisingly, you could talk about what happens on hit too. Gado G, literally on guard. Hi James, welcome to the stream. Option select. A situation where performing the same inputs can lead to several different outcomes depending on how the characters interact. Often abbreviated as OS, a common option select is the buffer. Press a normal attack and then try to cancel into a special. If you do this from far away, the normal attack will whiff and your special cancel does nothing. However, if your opponent gets hit by your attack, the special cancel will work automatically without any extra thought or changes to the input on your part. Maybe the best way to think about option selects is that they are hidden inputs. If you ever try to do something, but that thing doesn't happen on the screen, but it could have happened, if your opponent had done something else, you've done an option select. You've hidden a secondary outcome in your inputs that only happen some of the time, and only when it's favorable to you. Good option selects tend to reduce the burden on a player to perfectly predict or react to everything happening in the game. You can perform one set of inputs, and the game will select an option automatically depending on what the other character did. Some option selects are common enough that we even give them names. Delayed tech, try to block and throw tech. Safe jump, try to attack and block. And fuzzy guard, try to block multiple directions, are all specific examples of option selects that will help the player cover multiple choices at the same time. Jido Nitaku, literally auto 2 choices or auto mix-up, or Shikomi, literally preparation, mainly used for buffer option select. Watch how the same inputs generate different outcomes in these examples. Cody from Street Fighter 4 hides a ruffian kick input in his jumping attack. It only comes out if Rose does an invincible backdash and the jumping attack does not hit. Nanase under Night Inbirth inputs down forward ACD on defense. If the offense throws, she will tech, and if they jump, she will anti-air instead. Ryu, Street Fighter 5, constantly inputs crouching MK cancelled into fireball, but the fireball only comes out if the opponent gets hit by the normal. That's fascinating. And of course, just adds another layer of complexity to the way you play with like all your hidden inputs that you put between your moves, just in case, as well as reacting appropriately. OTG, using specific moves to hit the opponent while they're knocked down. OTG stands for off the ground or on the ground, depending on who you ask. Not every game has OTG as a mechanic, and even those that do, usually only a few specially marked moves can do it. OTG moves are pretty common in team games like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, where knocking your opponent down isn't the end of your combo, it's the start of it. Dan Suigeki, literally down pursuit. In Killer Instinct, Cinder can use his Pyro Bomb explosion to hit an opponent off the ground, OTG, then continue the combo. General Ram can also OTG with stomp attacks, which can set up further offense. OTGs are much more common in games like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 though, where they're a regular staple of many combos. Here, Dr. Doom does multiple OTGs in his standard bread and butter combo. Overhead, an attack that must be blocked while standing. In most fighting games, this means holding directly away from your opponent on the analog stick. Most air normals are overhead attacks, especially the classic instant overhead, but usually the term refers to moves that you use while on the ground. Examples include command normals like Jago's Neck Cutter, Back and HP, and Ryu's Collarbone Breaker, Forward MP, or special moves like Kai's Greed Sever. Not all characters are blessed with the privilege of having a grounded overhead attack. Overheads are best used on opponents after they settle down a bit and try to block your repeated fast low attacks. Because of this, overhead attacks are usually much slower than other attacks. Be sure to tell your opponent to watch your dome after you hit with one. See also mid attacks. Chudan means mid-level, or Chudan Kogeki, mid-level attack. In most 2D games like Street Fighter V, an overhead will hit crouching opponents and must be blocked standing. Virtually all jumping attacks are overheads, and some characters will also have grounded attacks that hit overhead. Plus, when you're able to freely act but your opponent cannot, usually because they're still trapped in block stun from your previous attack. Being plus or positive in a fighting game is quite strong. It means you always have a head start on your next attack, even if it's only by a very slim margin. Being plus and being minus are two sides of the same coin. When you're plus, your opponent is minus, and vice versa. You'll commonly use it in tandem with on block, as in, my medium kick is +1 on block. This means you will fully recover 1 frame before your opponent leaves block stun. That doesn't sound like a lot, but just think about it as a relative value. If you and your opponent attack with moves that have the same startup, your head start means you'll always hit first, and that's great. Yuri means advantage. Cammy from Street Fighter V is +3 on block after standing MP. If both characters hold up, a slow motion view shows green Cammy jumping 3 frames ahead. Crouching MP is +1 on block. It doesn't sound like much, but you'll always be able to attack first. Mira, Killer Instinct, uses Shadow Blood Seekers to be at least +100 on block, which lets her dash in and start offense from far away. Punish, attacking someone when they're in the recovery of a move and are unable to block, making the damage guaranteed. Maybe you made them whiff an attack and then hit them before they could recover, or maybe you blocked a very unsafe move and earned some big damage on a free counterattack. In any case, the opponent made their mistake and now they have to own up to the receiving end of some pain. Street Fighter VI rewards you handsomely for punishing your opponent's misplaced attacks through the punish counter mechanic. Kakute Hangeki, confirmed counterattack, or Kakuhan, which is an abbreviation. After risky moves like EX Shoryuken, Street Fighter V get blocked, your opponent gets a free punch. Punishes aren't only used to describe what happens after a blocked move though. You can also be punished if you whiff an attack and your opponent hits you while you're recovering. Quarter circle, a motion used to input many common special moves that starts at down and moves in a circular motion ending at left or right. The version towards your opponent is down, down forward, forward, or 2-3-6 in numpad notation. It's commonly abbreviated QCF for quarter circle forward, or maybe just called fireball since the majority of fireball uses command. Similarly, down, down back, back, or 2-1-4 is called QCB or quarter circle back, and is commonly referred to as the Tatsu input since it matches Ryu's Tatsumaki special move. Hado Commando, literally fireball command for quarter circle forward, or Tatsumaki Commando, hurricane kick command for quarter circle back. Gyaku Hado Commando, reverse fireball command, only for quarter circle back. Ryu's Hadoken, one of the most iconic fighting game moves of all time, is input with quarter circle forward. Reaction, the act of noticing that a certain action has occurred and then taking a specific action as a result. On defense, you'll use reactions to do things like see an overhead and change to a standing block, or see a jump and anti-air with an uppercut. On offense, you can force people to swing and miss and then whiff punish them, or you can hit confirm your attacks when they land. Reactions can come from visual or audio cues. Sometimes it's a combination of both. Not everything is reactable in fighting games since humans have physical limits. Because of the struggle of dealing with your mental stack, even very good players will often get hit by moves that have 20 frames with startup or more. So don't feel bad when it happens to you. The opposite of doing something on reaction is a guess, and both halves of this coin are vital to fighting game design. Hano, literally meaning reaction. On defense, common reactions include switching to standing block when you see the telltale signs of an overhead, Jago from Killer Instinct, or seeing a jump and anti-airing, hide from Under Night Inbirth. On offense, you might use a projectile, invincible move to react to a fireball, like Abel from Street Fighter IV. A read, a subclass of a guess where your decision is not wholly random, but instead informed by some knowledge about the game or your opponent's tendencies. In reality, though, they are pretty closely linked. You might say, for example, I knew he likes to throw in that situation, so I made a read and jumped to avoid it. If you choose to do an extremely risky move in order to capitalize on your read, like something that is unsafe on block, you might call that a hard read. Some people think a read is just a guess that worked, and there's probably more than just a little truth to that. Yomi, which means read. Recovery, the period of time that occurs after your attack has finished hitting, but before you gain back control of your character for more actions. It's one of the three stages of an attack, along with startup and active, as measured in frames. Recovery is the final stage of an attack, the part where your character is finishing the follow-through, and usually left wide open if you whiffed. Recovery is also a term often used in platform fighters to talk about returning to the stage after being launched off. You can read more about that here if you like. Kochoku literally means become stiff. Jago demonstrates the three phases of an attack: startup, active, and recovery. Light attacks tend to recover incredibly fast, and even some special moves like Hugo's Clap in Street Fighter 4 will recover nearly instantly, making them hard to counterattack. If your attack has long recovery though, you might be whiff punished, like Guy, or severely punished on block, like Gouken. Rekka, a type of special move that has multiple stages as long as you input more commands to continue the sequence. Not all multi-part specials can be called Rekkas though. Rekka tends to have exactly 3 distinct parts that will move your character forward along the ground with each new input. Usually the first part is safe on block, and you'll only continue into the later parts as hit confirm, although some games will tinker with this formula a bit, maybe including high and low options later in the sequence, so you can use them to mix up your opponent. The Rekka was originally named after Fei Long's Rekka Ken special move in Street Fighter 2. But it's now been generalized to mean any 3-part special move of this type in any game. Other characters with the Rekka include Jamie in Street Fighter 6, Hisako in Killer Instinct, and Ramlethal in Guilty Gear Strive. Rekka literally means Raging Fire. Rekka Ken, Raging Fire Fist. Fei Long's Rekka Ken, Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 4 is the origin of the term's name. You input separate commands for each of the 3 hits, so you can stop it early or finish the sequence as you like. Hisako from Killer Instinct and Yang from Third Strike have similar moves that are often called Rekkas. Notice how each example shares a similar visual feel for how the character lunged forward with each hit. See, like, some of these terms that come from other moves, like of course Shoryuken, or Hadoken, Rekka. It's interesting to see where these originate from, and they become such staples that they're become like universal moves to describe things even from games that they're not originally from. Or Tatsumaki, for example, right? Reset. Intentionally stopping your combo before its natural conclusion and trying to hit your opponent with a surprise mix-up while they're confused or overwhelmed. For example, you might stop a combo and throw someone since they're not expecting the need to throw tech while they're being hit. Or you might stop and use an overhead suddenly since your opponent will not be thinking about changing their blocking direction. In some games, resets are very powerful. If they work, they might start a new combo which resets the damage scaling and leads to extremely high damage. And in fast-paced games like Marvel vs. Capcom, they can come at you too fast to stop reliably. Hosei-giri, or correction cutting. Daburu apu, double up. Skullgirls is a reset-heavy game. Here, double does the same 7-hit sequence, then stops the combo and forces the defender to guess by either going cross-up, staying in the front, or doing an air throw. It's also quite easy in Killer Instinct to sneak in resets because the defender is thinking about how to combo break and not how to defend a mix-up. Spinal does a fast overhead, and Saberwolf does a surprise dash through. Reversal, an attack that's launched on the first possible frame after your character recovers from a state where they weren't allowed to attack, such as being knocked down or trapped in block stun. If you input a special move or a super in this way, most games will usually display a reversal message to indicate you hit the timing correctly, meaning there was no way the move could have come out earlier. Reversals can be any move, but usually pick a move with invincibility, like a Dragon Punch, so you can successfully avoid an opponent who's trying to attack you. If you hear someone asking if a character has a reversal, they're basically asking if they have an invincible move that can be used to escape pressure in this way. In most modern games, you can input your special move a little earlier than the reversal frame, and the game will save and apply your input as a reversal. This extra leniency means you don't have to hit the timing of that one specific frame to get out of sticky situations. The Tekken and Virtua Fighter series borrow the term reversal to describe a counter, so if you hear this term used in the context of a 3D game, it's not the same thing you just read about. Reversal, literally reversal, or Rebessa, literally an abbreviation. Ryu from Street Fighter V uses EX Shoryuken as a reversal. Its invincibility lets him blow through Ken's attack without problems. If Ryu tries other non-invincible attacks as reversals here, like a Tatsu or a crouching medium punch, he'll just get stuffed because Ken gets to attack first after a knockdown. If your opponent predicts a reversal, Killer Instinct, they could just block and kill you, so be careful. Round, the act of playing until a single health bar is depleted. Usually you need to win multiple rounds to win a game, and in most fighting games, winning a round will reset the character positions and health bars. In team games, the definition doesn't really make much sense, so we usually say there aren't any rounds and just jump straight to winning or losing a game. Roundo, literally meaning round. Safe, what you'd call a move that when it hits or is blocked, lets you successfully block or avoid any possible attack from your opponent. Basically, as long as you make contact with this move, you cannot be punished. Sometimes a move may be safe because your opponent is too far away to do anything, even if the frame data says you can be punished in theory. So while the numbers are most of the story, sometimes good range plays a factor. Safe moves play a hugely important part on the offense in basically every fighting game. If you want to know about the science behind a move being safe, it's a race between the block stun of your move and the recovery of your move. You don't necessarily have to recover before the block stun ends. Such a move is not only safe but plus. You just have to make sure the gulf is smaller than your opponent's fastest move, so you can be minus and safe as long as you're not too minus. Hangeki Dekinai, literally cannot counterattack, or Hangeki Saranai, won't get counterattacked. In Street Fighter V, Guile's EX Sonic Boom is +4 on block, and Urian's EX Tackle is -2 on block, are both safe. Being minus is no big deal as long as your opponent does not have an attack fast enough to punish you. Balrog's Light Dash Straight is -4 on block, which is not safe from close range, but if Balrog does it at the correct distance, he'll be safe as Yuri will not have any fast attacks that can reach him. Safe Jump, a very well-timed jump attack on a character who's rising from a knockdown. Your goal is to attack extremely close to when you land so that if your character performs an invincible reversal attack, you will land and be able to block. The opponent is then forced to block your jumping attack since reversaling doesn't work, which will give you some nice pressure and hopefully an opening. A safe jump is an option select with the same set of inputs. You can both attack your opponent and block if they have reversal. Pretty useful. The inner workings of a safe jump rely on how much recovery you have when you land from a jumping attack. In most games, it's pretty small, so as long as you have less recovery than the startup of your opponent's reversal move, you can make it to the ground and block in time. Some games have extremely fast reversal attacks though, so if you try to safe jump those with the standard method, you'll just get smoked. Because your attack has to be so well timed for this to work, it's really hard to just do a safe jump randomly. That's why most people have setups for them so they work consistently. Sagi Tobe, literally trickery or deceit jump. Gran from Grand Blue Fantasy Versus performs a safe jump after his sweep. Catalina must block the jumping attack if she tries to reversal. Gran lands in time to block. The concept exists in numerous fighting games including Guilty Gear and Under Night In-Birth. Setup, a situation that gives you ample time to place a specific mix-up. For example, if you land a hard knockdown on someone, you should have enough time to perform some pre-planned idea, like a safe jump or maybe an ambiguous cross-up. If you hear people asking, do I get set up after that? They're basically asking if they have enough time to plan something devious. Setup and set play are more or less the same idea, although the latter sounds a bit fancier. Similarly, a setup may refer to the actual method of performing these pre-planned mix-ups. For example, maybe after a certain knockdown, you walk forward a step or whiff a jab, then jump forward to perform a safe jump. This specific set of actions is called the setup, since they set up the timing and spacing requirements reliably. When you hear someone say, what's the setup for that mix-up, they're usually asking about this type of thing. Setto play, literally meaning set play. Sometimes the timing to execute a setup is very easy. Jago holds up after sweep for a safe jump, and sometimes you might have to whiff a button. Ram frame kills after his command throw to time a cross-up. In Street Fighter IV, Ibuki shows an extremely hard to block setup after a neckbreaker, while Cody dashes twice to set up an attack that looks like a cross-up, but actually hits in the front. Snapbacks in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 are incredibly scary, giving you all the time in the world to plan devious offensives. Shortcut, an alternative motion for inputting special moves that is often shorter and sometimes easier than the default motion. A common shortcut in modern games for the DP motion, normally 623 in numpad notation, is 323. This lets you rub the corners and can let you do a dragon punch from a crouching pose without needing to stand up. Shortcuts are common in pretty much every game in order to give input leniency and improve playability, so be sure to look into whatever shortcuts are possible in your favorite game and see if they help you out. The opposite effect is called a long cut. Special move, a move that typically requires a joystick motion and a button press to execute. Note the difference from a command normal. These moves are typically a character's most recognizable signature attacks, such as Ryu's Hadouken, Shoryuken, and Hurricane Kick. Usually a special move will come in multiple different strengths depending on attack button pressed, including EX moves, which can vary the effect of the move. While most special moves involve some motion on the joystick plus a well-timed button press, some specials use weird inputs like holding down a button for a while and releasing it. For example, Balrog's turnaround punch. While special moves were usually the holy grail of awesome when 8-year-old you was mashing on a SNES controller, in reality, normals tend to form the most important core of your offense. Hisatsu waza, literally killing technique. Spinning Pile Driver, a classic Zangief command throw in the Street Fighter series, executed with a 360 motion. Zangief grabs you, jumps high in the air while spinning, and slams you on the ground. Commonly abbreviated to SPD, it's also a catch-all term for any grappler's command throw executed with a 360 across virtually any game. SPDs tend to be very fast, do tons of damage, have long range, making them extremely scary up-close threats. The best way to deal with them? Don't be close enough in the first place. Keep those grapplers zoned out. Sukuryu Peru Driver, literally screw pile driver. Or Suguru, literally screw. So again, another example of like an input that is originated in one game with a specific character and a move and is now used across multiple different games as a universal. I think that's fascinating. Startup, the period of time that occurs after pressing your attack button, but before your attack is capable of making contact with the opponent. It's one of the 3 stages of an attack, along with active and recovery, and is measured in frames. It's best to think of startup as your attack's wind-up period. It's also a pretty important number to get comfortable with when learning frame data, since the speed of an attack is often used when formulating strategies. You'll often hear people say how fast is that move to ask about its startup. The communities for many games will double count the first active frame in the startup frames, so a move that has 8 frames of startup will hit on the 8th frame as opposed to the 9th frame. This makes it easy to understand punishes for moves, because an 8 frame attack will punish something that is -8 on block. So just ask which way of documenting startup is preferred for your game if you're unsure. Hase, literally to occur or to generate. I like that they account for things like this too, like also like when you're counting, do you count the first one as 0 or 1? Because that will affect a lot of the stuff going forward. It's good that the fighting game community for specific games comes together to decide these kinds of things. So we've seen this before. Jago demonstrates the 3 phases of an attack: startup, active, and recovery. Ryu and Zangief show the difference in startup between a super fast light attack and a slow chargeable heavy attack. If your attack is slow startup, usually there's some other benefit, like Killer Instinct Saber Wolf's unblockable. If your attack is incredibly fast and long range, like Third Strike Chun-Li's super, it's probably very powerful. String, a somewhat generic term that means multiple attacks performed in sequence. In the general fighting game sense, you can see it used in terms like block string, and you'll often hear people casually call things like chains or target combos strings depending on their background. In a 3D game like Tekken or Soul Calibur, a string more specifically means a pre-made series of attacks you'll find in a character's move list. But if you're pretty safe to use that term whenever multiple attacks get lined up and perform quickly back to back, no matter the game. Renkei literally means cooperation. Double Jin, Tekken 7, shows a common 1-1-2 string. Some strings can end with different attacks. Double Jin has a string that can go mid or low with the final hit. And some strings are really long, like Fang's 10 string. Soul Calibur uses similar terminology to Tekken, and most 2D games will call a rapid-fire sequence of block attacks a block string. A super. A strong, often cinematic attack that costs a percentage, usually all of your super meter, to perform, and announces its activation with a screen freeze. supers are usually a character's strongest attack, but they use more of your super meter compared to, for example, EX moves. You might also talk about a super's level, which is how much super meter you spent to activate it. So a level 3 super in a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ will cost you 3 full bars and will be more powerful than a level 1 super. There are many different ways supers are used in fighting games. Usually, they're just fast, high damage moves, and that's kind of it. But other uses exist too, including installs that power up your character for a limited time, and in many team games, you can use a DHC to chain multiple supers across each of your characters. They also are called a huge number of game-specific names, like Street Fighter V's Critical Art or King of Fighters' Desperation move, but it's pretty much all the same thing. Cho Hisatsu Waza, literally super killing technique, or Cho Hi, which is an abbreviation. Supers are often just a powerful version of a regular attack, like Ryu's Shinku Hadoken, Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 5, but they can be more than that. Urien Third Strike has an Aegis Reflector, a super that you throw out on top of an opponent and mix them up. And Magneto in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 has level 1 and level 3 supers that cost different amounts of meter.
Gravity squeeze. You are hyper combo KO.
So it took me a while sometimes to understand going from like a 3D fighting game to a 2D fighting game, the way EX moves and supers work. The fact that like, oh, this attack can come out with quarter circle light punch, but also if you do quarter circle medium punch or quarter circle a heavy punch, it's the same move, but maybe it does like different distances or different like amounts or projectiles or something like that. And I think that's really interesting that they do. Super meter, a special gauge that measures a resource you can use to enhance your attacks, usually through EX special moves or super moves. The super meter, or just meter for short, is typically separated into bars, which measure how much of the gauge is required to spend for these actions. You often build this resource just by playing the game normally, attacking and blocking. Spending it to perform stronger attacks is the most common use, but some games will let you spend it on defensive tools too, like Guilty Gear's Faultless Defense and Killer Instinct's Shadow Counter. Each game may rebrand the meter using their own specific term, like tension, but really it's all the same thing in the end. If a combo does not use any meter, we can say it is meterless. Geiji, or gauge, often understood by context to mean super gauge, or power gauge, literally power gauge, which is more uncommon. Tech, most commonly shorthand for throw tech. It can also refer to the act of quick rising after being knocked down, as in, you should tech when you hit the ground. In Smash Bros. In particular, teching when you hit the ground lets you stand up in place or roll either left or right, which is super important for trying to escape offense. Similarly, the definition can apply to recovering in the air after you've been hit by an air combo. If all these definitions aren't enough, the word tech is often used to talk about cool new strategies developed for a character. Like, did you see that new Ryu tech posted to Twitter? In this sense, tech is kind of a shortened version of technique or technology. Confused at why so many fighting games have terms with ambiguous meanings? Well, you're not alone. Ukemi, literally receiving body. This is a common judo and aikido term. That's one I've heard a lot too, and Soul Calibur uses ukemi a lot. Ido okiagari, literally moving while waking up, used for forward and backward tech rolls, or idooki, which is an abbreviation. Throw, a fast, close-range move that cannot be blocked. Throws are usually animated by the attacker performing a unique grapple attack and knocking the opponent down. In most fighting games, throws are input with 2-button commands, usually light punch and light kick together, but in some older games you input throw with just one button, usually forward and a heavy attack. You can defend against a throw with a throw attack, but watch out for command throws, which work a little bit differently. Jumping is also another way to avoid being thrown. Grab is a common synonym for throw, although throw tends to be the more used term. In Smash Bros. Titles, grab is generally preferred for the initial act of grabbing the opponent, while throw is used for pressing a direction to finalize the throw and send them flying, perhaps after pummeling your opponent. Throws are an important piece of the rock-paper-scissors interaction with blocking and attacking. They're usually incredibly fast and unreactable, so you can't just sit there and block all day. Nage means throw, or tsukami, which means grab. Rashid from Street Fighter V shows a forward and a back throw. You defend against throws by performing a throw tech. Some throws allow for combos too, like Dr. Doom in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Tekken 7, and Under Night In-Birth show off some basic throws. I personally really like throws, not that I play grappler characters, only because they usually have like cool animations. So they're cooler than the normal attacks, but they are easier to perform than special attacks. So, you know, you often get to perform like a cool animation that you wouldn't be able to admire otherwise just by pressing a simple like 2-button press or 1-button press. Throw tech, the act of defending against a throw, usually by pressing the throw input at the same time as your opponent tries to throw you. So in many modern fighting games, that would be pressing light punch and light kick. If you get the timing right, both characters get pushed apart to a neutral position and the fight continues. You have to be careful though, since if you try to throw tech every time someone's near you, you can get baited and you might just end up whiffing your own throw or getting counter hit if your opponent is clever. In some games, you might hear this called a throw break or throw escape. Usually, some form of delayed teching can help make throw defense a little easier. In Street Fighter 2, teching was not a thing, but in some versions of the game, pressing throw at the same time as being thrown would soften it. The throw would inflict about half its damage and you would flip out onto your feet instead of being knocked down. So if you hear the term throw softening, this is what people are referring to. Nage nuke, or throw escape, or grapple, which means grab. Grab defense is the official term for throw tech in Street Fighter 3, so people just say grab for throw tech. Oh, here's one that we love. Tier list. A subjective ranking of a game's characters from strongest to weakest. You could try to take a statistical numerical approach to this like through a matchup chart, or you can simply rank the characters by feel or intuition. Most tier lists assume the game is being played by players of equal skill and a high level of proficiency, otherwise the rankings can't carry much more meaning. As the name suggests, the characters tend to fall into tiers, a letter grade category that conveys a relative sense of strength. The meaning of these tiers is subjective itself, but here's a common interpretation. SS, incredibly game-breakingly strong, no losing matchups and easy strategies that lock down the game. S, usually the game's best characters, not very many losing matchups, but not strong enough to overrun the game. A, able to win tournaments without needing a counter pick, has a few losing matchups that are generally tolerable. 8, can make top 8 at a tournament, but might struggle to get over the top without a dedicated specialist, does okay for the most part. C, needs a dedicated specialist to see tournament success. There's likely a character in the game that has a similar archetype, but just strictly better. D, pretty darn bad, loses most matchups and is invalidated by several other characters. Play at your own risk. There are some people who think that because tier lists are subjective or reliant on finding strong players of equal skill, they don't hold any weight. Don't be one of those people. There's real value in thinking about character strength as it advances the community's knowledge and promotes interesting discussion. As long as you understand the context of the tier list, they are pretty useful. Kyaru Ranku, literally character rank. A sample Street Fighter 3 Third Strike tier list. Many think Chun-Li and Yun are the best characters in the game, while Sean and 12 are probably the worst. Each person may have a slightly different take on where the characters end up, but the discussion they promote is all part of the fun. Tiger Knee, a method to perform a special move in the air as fast as possible after you leave the ground, almost always abbreviated TK, and sometimes called an instant air special or IAS. If you want to do an instant quarter circle forward air move, for example, you would instead do the quarter circle move while on the ground, and then continue to roll your joystick to up forward to jump. Then you can simply just press your attack button and the game should save your quarter circle input long enough to have it count as the air move. Using numpad notation, this would be 2-3-6-9 or 2-1-4-7 for quarter circle back moves. In essence, rather than jumping and then inputting your special move, you input the special move first and then jump. The technique is named after the input for Sagat's Tiger Knee Crush, which was 2-3-6-9 in Street Fighter 2, even though it has been changed into a DP motion in modern games, which makes this term's meaning even more difficult to figure out. Hisako's air on Ryo-Zan, a quarter circle forward move, can be TK'd to be very low to the ground. The overlay shows that the QC was input before jumping. Street Fighter 4 Kami shows a combo involving multiple TK EX cannon strikes. Well, thanks for calling Kirby. You want to learn some fighting game terms, Kirby? Unsafe. What do you call a move that when it is blocked will let your opponent hit you for free before you can block or otherwise avoid their move? It is the opposite of being safe. You might also say the move is punishable. Moves that are unsafe are usually risky to use, but they tend to be pretty strong. Maybe they're highly damaging, able to start a long combo, or invincible in some way. Almost always we talk about moves being unsafe on block, but very rarely moves can be unsafe on hit as well. Much like measuring whether a move is safe, the inner workings of being unsafe is a race between the block stun of a move and the recovery of a move. If the recovery takes a long time and the opponent leaves block stun much earlier, they'll have enough time to wind up a move and hit before the recovery completes. Knowing whether a move is safe or unsafe when it is blocked is one of the first steps to using frame data well. Hangeki Kakute, literally counterattack confirm, or Hankaku, which is an abbreviation. Ryu from Street Fighter V blocks a sweep, and then both characters hold up so they jump as soon as possible. White Ryu is able to jump considerably earlier, showing just how unsafe Black Ryu is, and then punishes with his own sweep. Killer Instinct gives you a punishment message to let you know the opponent was able to block, but you'll have to be careful which attack you try to punish with. Some attacks are only unsafe to very fast moves like Orchid's crouching LK, and can't be punished by slow moves like Orchid's standing HP. Wake up, the act of rising from the ground after you've been knocked down. Since you're usually invincible when you're on the ground, there's a specific period of time where you become hittable again. This moment in time and the decisions around it from both players comprise the wake up game. The term wake up usually focuses on the choices the defender makes as soon as they stand up. If they choose to do a risky reversal attack like a dragon punch, you might say, man, another wake up DP from this guy. Or if they press buttons and keep getting counter hit, you might hear, you gotta stop mashing on wake up. The term okizeme is very closely related, focusing more on the offensive choices. Okiagari, literally, wake up. Oh, thank you for the stretch, Dismal, I appreciate it. And whiff punish, a particular kind of punish that will hit an opponent after they have whiffed an attack and are left recovering in the open. Some whiff punishes are possible on reaction, if the attack has lots of recovery or if you have a strong read on what your opponent will try to pick. At other times, if you stand at a good range and use strong pokes, you can whiff punish fast attacks without needing a reaction. Whiff punishing is one aspect of playing footsies. Walk closer to your opponent so they think it's fine to attack, then walk backwards and watch them swing and miss like a dummy. Sashi Kaeshi, literally return the strike. Whiff punishes are very common in Street Fighter games like Third Strike and Street Fighter V. You don't just have to walk out of range to cause a whiff though. In Tekken 7, you can sidestep an attack before punishing. In Guilty Gear Xrd, you can use faultless defense to push the opponent away and make block strings whiff, then punish. Wow. That was a lot of terms. That was 92 terms under the common heading that we went over there. Lots of reading. And again, like a lot of these things, like I've heard of before, but maybe I didn't know the exact definition, or I only kind of knew them from context. It's nice to get an actual definition and also like clarification, especially between the differences between like 2D fightings and 3D fighting games, or different types of communities will use different terms differently, or how word can have multiple meanings, or where it originates from. I find that really fascinating. Like language in general and the way it evolves is fascinating, but seeing the way it applies to things like video games and fighting games in particular is very interesting. And I'm so glad this thing exists as one place that has collated so much information with so many interesting videos and images to accompany them. And I do like the tone as well. A lot of the definitions kind of take a more casual tone, like they're describing it to you, but also giving you some practical application or knowledge or things like that. Or some fun like flavor text like, oh, if you find this confusing, well, yeah, it is. So I really recommend this resource. I'm really curious though, because there's 506 terms under general terms, 92 of which were commonly used, but there's definitely ones I think were missing, like ones I think should be commonly used, but were not. Like for example, if I have like heavy punch, they kept using, and it had a link to it, which means there's an article for heavy punch, but heavy punch is not in commonly used, but I'm assuming it's in general knowledge. So it's kind of interesting to think about how they might have decided on what exactly goes where under each heading. Now, this was really fun and educational, and I also love how they give the Japanese name too. That's really useful. I think I'll definitely be going over this on my own later to go through general terms or game-specific terms. Of course, you can see Street Fighter has a lot because a lot of these originated from Street Fighter. They also used a lot of Killer Instinct videos because Killer Instinct is also like a big anchor in the fighting game community and the development of fighting games, despite not being as big as the others. Super Smash Bros. Also has its own set because it's a platform fighter, which is a different type of fighting game that shares a lot of common terminology with the others as well. So I find that really interesting. Did you learn something from this video? Perhaps you should go check out the Fighting Game Glossary by Infil yourself, again at glossary.infil.net, especially because there's a lot of words that they were throwing around that they didn't define under commonly used that you might be interested in seeing, like what's a dragon install, or what is rollback netcode? You might have heard those before. What's a Shoto character? Or where does Ultra Combo originate from? Or more obscure, interesting terms like what's a happy birthday or a Merry Christmas in terms of a fighting game. I just find this stuff really interesting. Again, I want to get better at fighting games and practice them, but I just don't have the time to do that because I don't usually just stick to one game, but I would like to sit down and maybe get a little bit marginally better at one of them, like Street Fighter or something, at some point in time, even if I don't get like super good. And I encourage you to do the same. Give it a try if you've never played a fighting game before. See if you like it. I definitely think this is a better way to get in over that barrier of entry when you're reading a lot of these terms. And watching a lot of these videos made me want to go play some of these games. Like, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to go play some Killer Instinct now, or some Street Fighter, even though they're not games that I play very often. So I hope this was interesting and educational to you. I know this was maybe like a more quote-unquote like boring stream or dry video, but I think it's really useful. And I'm going to try to use more of these terms going forward when I'm talking about fighting games. I know there's some terms that I already use because they're probably kind of common or normal words, but there's other ones that I want to get in the habit of using, because the more you use the words, the more you'll find it's become normal. So thank you so much for coming to the stream. I really appreciate it. Let's find someone to raid. If anyone is available right now. Looks like a few people are. Let's drop in on my best friend, Atelier Kieran. He has also been meaning to get into fighting games more recently, so maybe this will be a way to encourage him as well. Let's go say hi to him. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, Froggy friends.